We often operate within systems so ingrained,
Right.
we barely notice them, like the standard workday, how we measure success.
Uh-huh. They're just there, part of the background noise.
But what if these very foundations, these seemingly neutral rules, are inadvertently shutting out huge swaths of people
Hmm.
and stifling incredible potential?
That's the crucial question we're tackling today. How do these deeply rooted structures unintentionally create barriers, hindering the emergence of a truly inclusive and effective society for everyone?
And our mission, really, in this deep dive is to dissect this. We want to explore how we can reimagine these systems, maybe foster a more supportive environment.
Yeah, and ultimately build a society where everyone can genuinely thrive.
So we've got some source material to guide us.
We do. Our core source for this exploration is Neurodivergent Power, the new blueprint for business. It offers a really powerful lens for this exact reimagining.
Neurodivergent Power.
Yeah, this book focuses on the strengths and unique perspectives of neurodivergent individuals, and crucially, how to build systems that actually leverage them. It pushes us beyond just accommodation.
Like beyond just making small adjustments.
Exactly. It's about fundamentally rethinking how things are built in the first place.
Okay, let's dive right in then. Starting with something pretty fundamental. How we even define achievement or success.
Right. The book highlights how current evaluation methods often rely on a pretty limited set of criteria. Things like speed or maybe outward displays of teamwork.
It's kind of like we're all being judged on the same narrow report card, isn't it?
It really is. And what's fascinating here is how this one-size-fits-all approach can quietly put so many people at a disadvantage.
Who are we talking about specifically?
Well, the source points to individuals with ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, introverts, highly sensitive people. Those are just some examples. People whose natural strengths might not line up neatly with these narrow definitions of success.
Right. Someone brimming with innovative ideas might not be the fastest person doing the task, perhaps.
Exactly. Or a really deep structural thinker might not be the loudest voice in a brainstorming session.
So what's the alternative? The book proposes something called a trait-specific KPI framework. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. So KPIs, key performance indicators, are how we measure success,
Okay.
right? The book argues we've been using a really narrow set. This framework suggests a big shift. Instead of applying the same metrics to everyone, we evaluate individuals based on their primary cognitive strengths.
Okay, so tailoring the measurement. Give me an example.
Well, for someone with strong ideation skills, maybe their success is measured by the sheer number of proposals they generate, or the speed of conceptualization, how fast they come up with ideas.
I see.
The core insight here is stop looking for some kind of universal good employee and start recognizing the specific genius each person brings to the table.
That makes perfect sense. You're valuing that initial spark, that creativity. What about someone who's great at organizing things? A real structural thinker?
Yeah, for those individuals, the KPIs might focus on things like reproducibility. Can others follow their process? Or operational stability. How reliable are the systems they create? It's about their talent for creating dependable processes.
And communication. That's often valued.
Definitely. For people strong in communication, evaluation could center on, say, conflict reduction within a team, or the precision of mutual understanding they help create. How clearly are ideas getting across because of them?
So it's really about identifying and, I guess, celebrating these different kinds of contributions, moving away from trying to force everyone into the same box.
Exactly. And truly leveraging individual talents. It helps the person grow, and it helps the organization too.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it becomes clear that recognizing and valuing diverse cognitive strengths isn't just about being fair.
No, it's absolutely not just about fairness. It's about unlocking much greater overall potential, driving innovation, getting better results, really.
Now let's talk about how we even bring people into our organizations.
Right.
Hiring rules. The book touches on the limits of what it calls disability hiring quotas.
Yeah, and what's interesting here is the perspectives shared in the source, often from the candidates themselves.
What do they say?
They often express feeling that within these designated tracks, they get sort of pigeonholed, relegated to repetitive tasks that don't truly use their unique abilities or perspectives.
It's like getting an invitation to the party but being stuck doing the dishes in the back.
That's a good analogy. And the book really stresses the need to move beyond this purely diagnosis-centric approach, to embrace what it calls the gray zones.
Gray zones. Okay. What does that look like practically in hiring?
Well, the source proposes several key shifts. One is trait disclosure, full-time employment. Essentially, empowering people to lead with their strengths, their cognitive traits, rather than feeling defined or limited by a diagnosis label.
Okay. What else?
Another is job assignments based on cognitive traits. So directly aligning roles with how someone's brain naturally works best.
Makes sense.
And finally, matching an evaluation based on work style fit. This means considering not just skills, but how someone prefers to work, what environment they need to thrive.
So it's much more about prioritizing how someone's brain is wired, their natural tendencies, and whether the environment fits them, rather than just ticking a box based on a label.
Precisely. It feels like a much more insightful and frankly effective way to build a genuinely diverse and high-performing team.
This really raises a big question, doesn't it? If true inclusivity is the goal, shouldn't our focus right from the start be on understanding and accommodating these diverse ways of thinking and working, rather than relying so much on diagnostic categories after the fact?
I think that's exactly the point the source is making. And the same logic, the same way of thinking extends beyond just the workplace.
Where else? Education.
Absolutely. Education systems. The book highlights how the current, often quite rigid, one-size-fits-all approach to learning can unfortunately lead to children with diverse traits being labeled as failures.
Think about your own school experience.
Hmm.
Did everyone really learn the same way? I know I didn't.
Right. And the examples in the book are really striking. Kids who struggle with textbooks but are amazing visual learners.
Or maybe they don't take great notes but can explain things perfectly after listening.
Exactly. Or kids who aren't strong in arithmetic but have incredible spatial awareness. Maybe they're brilliant with geometry or design.
These aren't signs of failure, are they?
Not at all. They're indicators of different learning styles, different cognitive strengths.
It's like trying to jam uniquely shaped puzzle pieces into the same square hole and then blaming the piece when it doesn't fit.
That's a perfect analogy. And the book strongly advocates for educators to cultivate a much deeper understanding of these diverse cognitive styles.
Where does that start?
It really needs to begin with teacher training, building that awareness and toolkit from the ground up.
If we connect this back to that idea of systems as maps, the source argues that our education systems should be like maps that actually guide people through learning in a way that works for them, that resonates with their natural way of processing information.
And just like any map, these systems can, and the book argues should, be redrawn to better serve everyone's unique journey.
Okay, so we can design the most inclusive systems imaginable, better evaluations, better hiring, better education pathways. But the book makes a really critical point here.
Which is?
Without a supportive culture, a supportive environment, those systems will just fall flat.
Absolutely. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, right?
Right. And it shares a really telling story about a company that had put new flexible work arrangements and evaluation systems in place.
Ah, yes, I remember that one. What's fascinating there is the gap between the official rules on paper and the unwritten cultural norms, the actual feeling in the workplace.
So what happened?
Well, even though the policies had changed, there was this subtle atmosphere, a feeling that you weren't really allowed to use the new flexibility.
Like it was frowned upon.
Exactly. There were whispers about lack of commitment or lack of enthusiasm if someone chose to work different hours or maybe communicate in a way that suited them better but wasn't the norm.
So it paints this picture of well-intentioned tools just gathering dust because the underlying culture hadn't shifted at all.
Precisely. And the book emphasizes that culture can subtly, quietly, but very profoundly hinder inclusion through misunderstandings, misinterpretations, and just the constant fear of being judged.
What are some of those cultural elements that get in the way?
The source highlights several. That feeling of needing to constantly explain yourself just to justify why you do things differently.
Exhausting.
Totally. Also, the unspoken value placed on sheer endurance, just toughing it out, even if the situation is genuinely difficult or inefficient. And the pressure to conform to all these unwritten expectations and norms.
It creates an environment where many people feel they just can't be authentic, can they?
No, they can't. They have to put on a mask, perform in a certain way.
So if systems are the structure, the bones, then culture is the atmosphere, the air we breathe.
Yeah.
And if the air is toxic.
And nothing healthy can really grow there, no matter how good the structure is.
So how do we actually change the culture? It feels so intangible sometimes.
It can feel that way, but the source offers a really powerful insight. Culture evolves through language, the words we use every day.
Okay. How so?
It provides specific examples of subtle but really significant shifts in our everyday conversations. For instance, instead of thinking or saying, that person's a bit strange,
Yeah,
we could reframe it as, that person has a unique strength. It immediately shifts the perspective from judgment to appreciation.
I like that. Simple, but potentially powerful. What are some other examples of this kind of language shift?
Well, instead of an accusatory, why can't you even do this, which just shuts people down,
Right.
try asking, genuinely, what conditions make this task difficult for you right now? It opens the door to understanding, to finding solutions, maybe providing support.
It changes the whole dynamic.
It does. The book also suggests moving away from this idea of standardizing everyone, forcing conformity,
Towards what?
towards embracing sharing our differences as a collective strength, a mutual responsibility even, and shifting from a culture that relies on reading the air or guessing unspoken rules.
Which is impossible for some people.
Exactly. Towards one of clarifying the air, where direct, clear communication about expectations is valued and encouraged.
These feel like really practical, actionable changes in how we talk to each other. And the book shares a compelling real-world example too, doesn't it? About an employee with ASD.
Yes, who struggled to find the right moment to jump into fast-paced meeting discussions. What's inspiring is the manager's response. Instead of just saying, speak up more, or dismissing the difficulty,
Yeah.
they introduced a new approach. They allowed input both verbally and through a pre-meeting chat function, where people could submit thoughts beforehand or during the meeting without having to find that perfect verbal opening.
Oh, interesting. So it gave another pathway for contribution.
Exactly. And what's even more significant is how this seemingly small change didn't just help that one employee, it actually benefited others on the team too, who maybe also felt hesitant to speak up.
So it shows how one voice, one accommodation, can actually spark broader positive cultural change.
Precisely. It really highlights the power of listening, being curious, and being willing to adapt the way things are done.
Now, the book delves into a topic often considered, well, an innate trait, empathy. But it challenges that idea, right?
That's right. The source strongly asserts that empathy isn't just something you're born with or not. It's actually a skill.
A skill, like playing the piano or learning a language.
Kind of, yeah. It's something that can be consciously developed, trained, and strengthened over time, which is a really encouraging idea, isn't it?
Absolutely. Because if it's a skill, it means we can all actively work on improving it. It's not fixed.
Exactly. And the book also offers a really insightful redefinition of empathy. It suggests moving beyond just putting yourself in someone else's shoes.
How so? What's the shift?
The key shift is focusing on understanding what foundational perspective is this person feeling from. It's about trying to grasp their underlying experience, their internal reality, even if it differs significantly from our own.
Okay, trying to understand their starting point, not just imagining ourselves in their situation with our starting point.
Precisely. The source provides some powerful examples to illustrate this shift.
Like what? Tell us more about how we can make that mental shift.
Okay, well, consider someone with heightened sensitivity to sound. Instead of thinking, it's not that loud or I don't even notice it, we can try to genuinely imagine what it might feel like to constantly experience overwhelming low-frequency vibrations or sharp sounds feeling like physical pain. We might not feel it ourselves, but we can try to understand that perspective.
Right. Or the example about conversational timing.
Yes. When someone struggles with the back and forth flow, instead of thinking, why can't they just read the room?
Which implies they're doing something wrong.
Right. We can instead consider that they might be operating with a completely different, maybe more literal or structured set of internal social rules for conversation. Their room might be configured differently.
It's about expanding our understanding beyond the limits of our own immediate sensory or social experience.
Exactly. And the book introduces this concept of empathy education. It suggests there are practical ways to cultivate this skill, outlining 3 crucial components.
Okay, what are they?
The first involves tools for simulating other perspectives. Think like using VR to experience sensory overload, or maybe communication exercises that deliberately remove nonverbal cues to highlight reliance on explicit language.
Interesting. Getting a taste of a different reality. What's the second?
The second is training in verbalizing inner feelings, creating safe spaces and learning skills to articulate our own emotions and internal states without judgment, fostering better emotional literacy for everyone.
So understanding ourselves better helps us understand others. And the third,
The third is creating spaces for non-judgmental conversation. Basically, judgment-free zones in workplaces, schools, communities where people feel safe discussing differences and difficulties openly.
these aren't just abstract ideas. They're practical methods for building what the book calls that invisible emotional muscle.
Exactly. And the payoff is huge. A society that genuinely understands and embraces difference rather than just tolerating it.
And the book connects empathy to the future, too, in a really compelling way.
Yes, it makes the point that as AI and technology handle more routine analytical tasks,
Huh?
those uniquely human skills like empathy, collaboration, understanding nuance, they become even more critical and valuable.
The things machines, currently, can't replicate well.
Precisely. The ability to genuinely understand and respond to another person's emotional state in a complex, nuanced way is fundamental to human connection and effective collaboration. It's a vital skill to cultivate for the future.
So empathy isn't just a nice-to-have soft skill. It's actually a fundamental building block for a more functional, humane society. And this leads the book to pose a really thought-provoking question.
Which is?
Who is society designed for?
That really makes you stop and think, doesn't it?
It does. It forces us to confront the often unconscious assumption that society is primarily designed by and for the neurotypical majority.
And while that might not always be intentional malice, this default setting, this sort of baseline assumption, has often left many individuals feeling like they don't quite fit, like the world wasn't really built with them in mind.
And the book offers a powerful reframe of what true universality actually means.
It's not just about adding ramps or special accommodations as an afterthought, right?
Exactly. It's not just patching holes. It's about designing a society, designing systems that feel inherently right, inherently comfortable and functional for everyone from the very beginning.
A much more ambitious goal. So what are some of the core design principles for this kind of empathy-driven society?
The source proposes 5 key principles. First, always offer choices.
Choices in what?
In how we communicate, how we work, how we learn, how we're evaluated. Flexibility built in.
Okay, makes sense. Second.
Second, make assumptions explicit. Don't rely on unspoken rules. Clearly state expectations around time, communication styles, priorities, turn-taking in conversations, everything.
Get rid of the guesswork. Third.
Third, don't punish discrepancy. Design things with the understanding that deviations from the norm are natural and expected, not problems to be fixed or penalized.
Interesting. Build in tolerance for difference. Fourth.
Fourth, listen to the quietest voices. Actively seek out and center the experiences of those who often struggle the most within existing systems. Design with them, not just for them.
Give priority to the margins. And fifth.
Fifth, align systems with sensibility. Make sure the structures we build, the rules, actually work with the culture. We want that supportive, empathetic culture. They need to reinforce each other.
Structure and culture working hand in hand. Got it.
It's really about embedding flexibility, clarity, and genuine understanding into the very DNA of our society. And the book points out something important here.
What's that?
This kind of society isn't just beneficial for one specific group, like neurodivergent individuals. It actually benefits everyone.
How so?
It acts like a kind of spare seat, as the book puts it, a safety net.
A spare seat. Explain that.
Well, think about times when you might struggle. Maybe you're facing a personal crisis, dealing with illness, recovering from burnout, or just having an overwhelming day where you can't operate at your normal capacity.
We all have those times.
Exactly. In those moments, an empathetic, flexible society provides that safety net, that spare seat. It offers understanding and belonging even when you can't meet the standard expectations. It supports everyone through difficult patches. That's a powerful analogy. It makes the benefit much more universal.
It does. And the book then introduces this idea of softness, contrasting it with the traditional ideal of a strong society.
Softness. That sounds maybe weak.
But that's the twist. A soft society, as described in the source, isn't about being weak or permissive or lacking standards. It's about possessing resilience.
Resilience.
I
How
think
does softness equal resilience?
It's the power to absorb impact when differences arise or when things go wrong. The ability to adapt and adjust rather than just being rigid and breaking under pressure.
Okay, so flexibility is strength.
Exactly. It's about having faith in the adaptability of our structures and fundamentally in the inherent worth of each individual, even when they deviate from the norm. The core insight is that true strength isn't rigidity. It's the capacity to bend, flex, and support diverse needs, which actually makes the whole system more robust and resilient in the long run.
So instead of insisting that everyone conform to one rigid framework, a soft society asks, okay, this isn't working for you. How can we adjust the system to better support you?
Precisely. The book gives examples like if people consistently struggle with early morning meetings, don't just tell them to try harder, ask why, and maybe redesign how information is shared.
Or for students struggling in a noisy classroom.
Instead of just demanding conformity, ask where could you focus better? Find an alternative environment that works for their learning style.
It's a design philosophy grounded in understanding and flexibility, isn't it?
Completely. And it extends beyond just work and school. It applies to all facets of society, our homes, our healthcare systems, city halls, community groups, everywhere.
What are some key characteristics of this soft society in action?
Well, silence isn't automatically interpreted as negativity or disengagement. Taking necessary breaks is seen as normal and acceptable, not lazy. Differences are met with genuine curiosity, not suspicion or judgment.
And inability.
Perceived inability isn't seen as a personal failing, but as a signal, a flag that the system might need adjustment or that different support is needed.
This vision of a soft society sounds incredibly promising, much more humane. But how do we get there? What are the practical steps? The book talks about launching a co-creation-based society.
Yes, and the emphasis is really on co-creation. This isn't something dictated from the top down. It requires active participation from everyone at all levels, starting with individual initiative.
Okay, so what can individuals do?
It outlines concrete steps.
Yeah.
The first is simply to re-examine the design around you. Look at your immediate surroundings, your team meetings, your family routines, your community groups.
And do what?
Make small, thoughtful adjustments. Things we've discussed. Maybe allowing written contributions in meetings alongside verbal ones, building in silent thinking time before discussions, using visual aids, offering alternative ways to participate. Small tweaks can make a big difference.
Simple things, but they can significantly change who feels comfortable contributing. What else does the book suggest for co-creation?
Building systems both top-down and bottom-up. This means formal policy changes from leadership, yes, but also, crucially, local experiments within teams or communities.
Like what kind of experiments?
Things like maybe eliminating mandatory attendance at certain meetings if the information can be shared differently, experimenting with flexible response times for emails, or even creating specific, safe channels for sharing frustrations about processes without fear of reprisal.
So empowering local initiative. And what about making voices heard?
That's vital. The book stresses increasing storytelling spaces, creating more opportunities for people to share their experiences, especially their difficulties and challenges with existing systems, openly and honestly.
Like those judgment-free zones we talked about. Places where vulnerability isn't a weakness.
Exactly. Maybe it's anonymous feedback notes about what feels difficult each month, or dedicated times for sharing discomfort stories related to work processes or communication breakdowns, making the invisible struggles visible.
And the final step?
Open up, expand allies, connect. Basically, don't try to do this alone. Recognize that many others likely feel similarly or are already working on these issues. Connect with them through online communities, local meetups, professional networks. Just finding and acknowledging existing efforts, building a coalition, a movement for this shift towards a more empathetic society.
As we begin to wrap up this deep dive, I'm just reflecting on how many listeners might personally connect with those feelings we discussed of not quite fitting in, of feeling like the rules weren't made for them.
It's a very common feeling, I think, far more common than we often acknowledge.
And the book offers a really powerful, almost radical message for anyone feeling that way.
It does. The core message is so clear and direct. You don't have to change. Let's change the society instead.
Wow. That's a bold.
It is, and the source acknowledges that pushback is inevitable. You'll hear things like, that's unrealistic, or people are just being spoiled, or everyone else is working hard and coping, why can't you?
Yeah, those criticisms are common.
But the book powerfully asserts that real progress begins with a fundamental shift in perspective. It starts with recognizing the simple truth. Different isn't wrong, different isn't deficient, it's just different. And diversity is strength.
It paints this picture of a society where maybe moments of silence and conversation are just accepted, not awkward, where a so-called short attention span is recognized as maybe rapid idea generation.
Right, or where slow, meticulous progress is celebrated for its quality, not criticized for its speed. Where someone can say, I'm struggling with this, and the response isn't blame, but curiosity. Okay, what needs to change so you can succeed?
It's really not about granting special favors or lowering standards, is it?
Not at all. It's about reshaping our collective structures, our expectations, our culture to truly accommodate the beautiful, messy, wonderful diversity of actual human beings, to fit each person's true form rather than forcing them into a pre-made mold.
And the book concludes with a very direct, almost personal invitation to each listener.
It does. It asks that if you encounter someone, maybe even yourself, who is rushing, striving, trying desperately to become something they feel they should be but aren't,
Yeah.
to gently, perhaps quietly, affirm their inherent worth just as they are right now.
Wow.
That act of acceptance, self-acceptance, and acceptance of others, the source suggests that that is the very foundation. That's the initial blueprint for building this new, softer, more empathetic society.
So let's leave our listeners with that final profound question from Neurodivergent Power. What does your ideal society feel like to the touch? Is it hard and pristine, like steel, never bending, never scarred? Or is it warm and supple, like a cushion that gently catches you when you stumble?
It's a powerful question to carry with you, isn't it? To really sit with and consider your own honest answer.
Absolutely, and perhaps your next small step, whatever that looks like for you, taken at your own rhythm.
Maybe just a change in language or listening differently.
Exactly. That small step can be the very first sentence in writing that new societal chapter.